Well, the Obama administration provides a big opening for Republicans after the White House announcement last week that it will delay fraud prevention measures in the new health care law until after the 2014 midterm elections. House lawmakers now are gearing up for a hearing tomorrow investigating whether the White House has the authority to push back the mandate on employers to provide health coverage. Rich Lowry is editor of the National Review, a Fox News contributor, and a big fan of the president's new health care law. No, I made that last part up. So we find out that this employer mandate is not going to be enforced, the White House says, for another year. Valerie Jarrett says it's all fine, though. Everything's still going according to plan.
Yeah, well, it seems to be a matter of just black letter law in this law that you had to set up had to get the employer mandate underway now. And this is just another case, John, where they seem to be just rewriting the law on the fly. And it relates to the latest change, which they're not going to verify the people who get on the exchanges, whether they're really eligible for them, which seems to fail the most basic test of good government. So all this just means that they have conceded the law is not going well and that it's up in the air in a way they've been loath to say it is. The line all along has been it's inevitable and resistance is futile. Now we know that's not true. So
Congress passed a law, sort of, and the administration is supposed to enforce it. According to my high school civics class, they've decided that this one they're just not going to enforce.
Yeah, well, they've taken, when it comes to everything, a highly discretionary view of the law, whether it's immigration law, whether it's this, whether it's recess appointments. So it really casts a pall of suspicion over everything you do. And coming back in immigration, a lot of conservatives are wondering now, why even bother passing a law that supposedly has all sorts of enforcement mechanisms if you know they can ignore it the same way they're ignoring provisions and changing them on the fly with the health care law?
So you see an opportunity here for Republicans in trying to, change or maybe even toss out the health care law altogether?
I do. The law is not popular prior to this point. I think the obvious chaos in the implementation isn't going to make it any more popular, and Republicans should do everything they can to delay and/or repeal specific parts of it. And I think there's a big opening now where I think you could pressure Democrats, especially in the Senate, to repeal this employer mandate entirely, because the reaction on the left among a lot of liberal pundits has been, well, this employer mandate was a bad idea all along and it's just incidental to the law. Well, if that's true, let's get rid of it entirely.
Interesting that it all gets pushed back until after the next round of elections.
Of course. And look, I think they were having trouble implementing the reporting requirements from the employers, which are hideously complicated. But a big worry clearly is that this mandate is a suppressant on the hiring of full-time workers, and they want to delay that effect as much as possible and past and beyond the 2014 election.
You touched on the immigration reform. It's out of the Senate. It's in the House's hands now. What's going to happen next?
Well, the House is not going to vote on the Gang of Eight Senate bill. It's going to vote on discrete measures that it thinks make sense and are more incremental. The big question is whether there'll ever be a conference with the Senate. And folks like me, who are skeptical of the Gang of Eight bill, think it would be a mistake to have a conference committee because there's so much opportunity for mischief, and it would be just better for the House to kill this thing and to start over after 2014 when Republicans actually may control the Senate, and the correlation of forces will be different, and they'll have much more leverage to do commonsensical measures.
Yeah, but would they have a bill that the president would be willing to sign?
Well, then you could pass a bill, and it's incumbent on him to veto an immigration measure, where the politics, I think, would be a little different.
So you argue for going slowly?
Going slowly, do things that make sense. And I think a lot of Republicans in the Senate voted for this out of a sense of political panic, and the idea that they could vote for this, I think, misbegotten law and put the immigration issue entirely behind them. I think that's a fantasy. There are various measures in this law, even if it's passed, where Democrats would come back to them and say, well, why is the path to citizenship so long? Why are you barring these immigrants from receiving various government subsidies that other people get? So the immigration issue, there's no putting it behind you in that definitive sense.
What about the argument, and you can see TV commercials about it, that the system we have now is de facto amnesty amnesty for the 11 or so million illegals already here.
Yeah, well, what you want to do, though, is come up with a system where you don't have this problem again. And according to CBO, the current bill, the Gang of Eight bill, would reduce illegal immigration by as little as a third, which means you could have 7, 8 million illegal immigrants again 10 years from now. We don't want to be in a situation as a country where every 10 or 15 years we have to pass another amnesty.
As we show your book cover, I just want to ask you, what would Lincoln do? Lincoln Unbound is Rich Lowry's great new book. I'm reading it now. It's fascinating. But what would he do on immigration?
On immigration? Well, he'd have a very generous attitude towards illegal immigrants. I think that's clear. But he also worshipped lawfulness. So where he would come down in the specific law, I don't know.
Okay.
That's a pass, John. Sorry.
That is a pass. We'll ask about Lincoln and healthcare next time.